You gotta wait, we're going now. Wait till after. So basically what we're going to do is look at how, and in this system there are a number of energies you look at in terms of your personal numbers. They have numbers for, if you look at the first paragraph, it says you're endowed at birth with your own 4 personal numbers. These numbers tell you the lessons to be learned during your life and the spiritual growth and development to be learned, which you can attain. The 4 personal numbers are the life lesson number, the soul number, the outer personality number, and the path of destiny number. Your personal numbers are determined by the numbers in your birth date and the letters in your name you are given at birth. To arrive at the numerical vibration of names, each letter in the alphabet is given a number value. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so forth till Z, which is 26. To work with the value of the letters beyond 1, which is number 9, we reduce the value of a single digit to a single digit. For example, L is number 12. We reduce 12 by adding the first, 1 and 2 equals 3, and so forth. So we talk about that. So over here, it gives you each of the letters and the numerical value. So what we're going to do is just today we're just going to work with the first one, the life lesson number. Turn to page 17, the next page. The first 4 personal numbers we will discuss is called the life lesson number. It represents the lessons you must learn in this lifetime and the most significant in your choice, and it's most significant in your choice of a career. And then they have different chapters in the book where you can get into more detail. It says, it is derived from your full birth date. Even a business or an idea has a moment of birth and can therefore be treated in the same way. It's based upon the axiom, those things born at a certain time take on the qualities of that time. Because each time is a summation of all the energies operative in the universe at that moment. And it gives a certain quality, which is constantly changing. So each moment has its own quality. So something that comes into life at that moment has that energy or vibration as its beginning point. It's the one for that beginning, and that starts off the cycle. So then everything then, just like they say problems, when you conceive of the problem in your mind clearly, that moment in time represents an answer to the problem because there's a quality there, and you can get into different means of finding answers to that thing. But the idea, when you engage in business activities, when you start a business, when you start a new career, or engage in a relationship, or whatever, the moment that cycle begins sets the tone for that whole cycle. So many times people wait for certain opportune moments to initiate things so that the initiation of that thing will be in a harmonious energy pattern. Just like, a day. You don't start your day at 12 noon. I mean, some people do, but, you know what I'm saying? Each sunrise sets the tone for that next cycle of the day, the next 24 hours. Each spring sets the tone for that next cycle, etc. So, and that's the basic idea. When you were born and you took your first independent breath and became an independent operating entity, and you took that first breath and inhaled yourself, then that set your cycle into motion. And that became your birth date, your birth time. So that's what it's kind of it's based upon. So we just get into the practicality of it. So you take your birth number, like my number is 11/30/1948, and you just add it together. It's like 11 and 3, or 2 and 3 is 5, plus 9 and 1 is 10, is 15, 19, 27. So the number is 27, and you add them together, it gives you 9. So my life lesson number is a 9. So then I would look up in here and look up number 9, and then give some insights in terms of what my life lesson number is really all about. You should be the universal lover of humanity, patient, kind, and understanding. You are at the peak of life's expression and must turn and show others the way. You seem to receive wisdom from above. Thus you know that the true way of happiness is in service to others. You are the marrying type, strong in passion and compassion. You easily acquire money or wealth and know how to preserve it. That's interesting. You are never petty but deal in broad concepts and can attain a success in the face of difficulty. You are here to show others the way through your breadth of thinking. You can choose from any profession, education, medicine, or the most usual. You may become an orator, writer, or lecturer with equal ease. Communication, foreign service, statesmanship, and leadership position are easily within your capacity. Boom. Now, as you see, within all the things that's stated, you're not going to be all of them. Some is going to be more dominant than others, and etc. So what I want you to do right now is work out your life lesson number. So take your birthday, just like I did, add the digits together, get the total, and then combine those into a single digit.
What you do is that 1 plus 1, 3, 1 plus 3.
Or you can say, 11 and 3 would equal, 1 and 1, because it's the same difference, right? 11 and 3 is 14, which combined together is 5. Or 1 plus 1 and 3 is 5. No matter how you do it, it's going to come out the same thing. If I did it the other way, say I went 11 and 3 is 14, 15, 24, 28, what's that? 28, 30, 36 is 9, right? So it come out to be the same thing. But basically, we got 11 is 1, 2, 5, 6, 15, 19, 27. Right, just add each digit together. So I want you to take your birthday and do the digits for your birthday and see what you come up with. So a lot of times what we wish to do with this, like when people want to change their names, you could actually then find a name, a new name that had the same vibration as your birth name and just convert it over into a more African-centered name. So you can still maintain your same vibration. Or, I mean, it's a number of ways. You should do astrological charts on the person, and then you could focus in on your sun sign and see what that energy is, and then choose a name that represents that quality. It just depends on what is the emphasis you want to identify with. But then again, understanding that every name has a vibrational energy with it. So even though people may not know what their name means, you can then break that name down into its numerical value and understand what the vibration of that number is, and understand what it's really projecting.
Sometimes vibrational energy causes them to act a certain way, like in relation to that energy.
You say, does the name?
Yeah, if they have their name,
Mm-hmm.
Denotes a particular energy. That energy kind of get that person to come into that particular field of energy? Or?
Well, see, but the thing is that every energy has both its positive and negative expression. So it's going to depend upon the level of consciousness of the individual, how they express that energy. So that's really what the thing is. But at the same time, every time that name is spoken, that energy is projected or is vibrating, and it has a tendency to stimulate that individual. Now, how they respond to it, again, depends upon their consciousness, how they must have been conditioned, or, their values and that type of thing. So, but as they become aware of these things, then every time that energy comes, it has a tendency to invoke the positive attributes. That's why names are really very important, but people don't understand why they're important,
I guess sometimes people find out later that they have their name is and they try to conform to it.
Yeah, but see, usually that energy is operative anyway. They're just not aware of it. They just become conscious of it and then try to embody it, because every no number is better than any other number. It's just has a different role to play in the whole scheme of things,
So did we as people in the past just give it give somebody let somebody a name, you gave them a name, and then you said, well, this is the energy that they have, or was it like we just uncovered it, like, man, this is.
Well, see,
this energy, and then we put it together.
Well, see, the thing is originally when we had our original language. Your language is tied to the whole development and history and nature of the people. And so then names were given for various reasons. Part of your name would be connected to your family group, which then that name is connected to a whole history of you. That ties you historically to your whole lineage and where you came from. Then another name may be relative to the particular energy that you have, because most times there were always elders in the community that would vibe, either various means of divination or intuitional insight in terms of what your life purpose is really all about, and they would give you that name. And then sometimes your parents or different things would happen. Sometimes you would embody the spirit of your great ancestor, and they would give you that name because you embodied that energy. And then different times in your life, your name may change based upon where you are and the change you're going through. They would give you a name that signified the new place you were, in life and, your qualities. So, but then, it's over 1,000 different dialects in Africa and languages. And so, and different ethnic groups who have their own variation on how they do it. But essentially, because the language was organic, and it expressed these concepts in the language. See, we're here in America, and we're in the language that we're utilizing, on one sense, are not directly connected to our own heritage and identity and that type of thing. But on another level, all names represent energy and vibrations that have meaning. So like my birth name is John. Well, John means gift of God. But then you say, well, gift of God. But what is God? God is the hierarchy of forces. So then, what do I teach? I'm constantly trying to bring that forth, So once you understand the esoteric of anything, you can bring the positive out of it, as opposed to negative.
Is that basically what happened in Islam when people change their religion, when they change the name?
In one sense, but usually people adopt the name because of the attributes, or it's an inspirational thing to them. They identify with certain of those characters and those characteristics, so they want to embody that, so they take that name to reinforce that in their life.
So it's not really heavy into
The language itself in Arabic is, but you'd have to deal with those who are the initiates and the metaphysicians in the system to be able to understand it. Just like everything else, the general population, the general practitioners are not involved in that. Right. The inner teacher. Every religion has an inner teaching, a group that deals with the metaphysics of that group. And it's usually a small group, and then you have the larger group who's basically into the exoteric or the outer, part of it.
Just to keep people confused, I guess, and keep them away from the esoteric.
Keep them away, and then sometimes it's just convenient. Because for to start to educate people in-depthly, you can't be speeding, trying to compete and be at war, and conquer and all that kind of. You ain't got time because it takes time. So they just say, I give you names, and you just follow what I'm telling you, and then we take a small group of people and we let you guys spend all the time, because we got to build industries and roads and farm and cattle, So it's kind of been like a division of labor type thing. Yeah, all that. But then when you have, in this new age with the development of technology, you're going to have the increased leisure time. Now the question is, what are people going to do with leisure time? Party more, trip more, or are they going to take their time to get deeper into their spiritual nature, which is really what it's really all about, but we're going to deal with that. Okay, so we're going to continue on in terms of dealing with 5 and 6. We're going to have to double up on the numbers because we got a time schedule that we're on, and we need to try to stay on that time schedule because they want to have a number of other speakers to come through during July, like LeGrand Cledge or Runoko Rashidi and Mafu Atir and Richard King to do a whole series too. So I need to get in and get out of here and expose you to what you need. So good. Theosophy, basically, Blavatsky was a clairvoyant. Yeah, she was a Russian who, her father was a military officer, and she grew up, really being kept by her grandmother. And the grandmother, was from the old school, and they used to go out like in nature, and she used to work with her on communing with natural spirits and, dealing with her imagination and all that. So anyway, she had the capacity, she developed the capacity of clairvoyance. And also her father had a major library because he was a part of the intelligentsia and the nobility, so they used to, you get educated with tutors. So by the time she was 13, 14, she had read most of the books in her father's library, which contained a lot of metaphysical, esoteric material and that type of thing. At the same time, she also cultivated the capacity for her clairvoyance, clairaudience. So anyway, she was supposed to get married to this army guy, and she ends up, not really consummating the marriage and running off and going on these adventures and whatever. Anyway, she eventually started studying with these different metaphysical schools, and supposedly had then been contacted by an order of metaphysical masters, and her purpose was to break the hold that Western Christianity had on mass consciousness in terms of the dogmatism and the materialistic perspective. So her mission was to open up the Western mind to a broader understanding of metaphysical or spiritual concept as opposed to religious dogmatism of Christianity. And so, and as a part of that, she really tied into the Tibetan, Buddhist, Hindu energy, and really they were very instrumental in Indian liberation movements in terms of getting Indian people to go back into their own culture and break the hold of the British in terms of them identifying with their own cultural heritage and pushing for their own freedom and liberation. At the same time, they set up chapters all over a lot of the major areas of the world, and developed a lot of students in terms of a lot of your present-day metaphysical schools actually came out of experiences with theosophy. I mean, the Brotherhood of Light, Sabian Assembly, stuff with Steiner, and I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of these guys, are like the metaphysical, the contemporary, really around the 19th century, the 1800s, is when this, really around the mid-1800s. It was interesting because my research has indicated that really the Aquarian age started in the mid-1800s, around the same time of the Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, when you had the so-called freedom of the slaves. But if you look at that time, there was a major explosion in terms of inventions, dealing with electricity and transportation, and all forms of technology started to really explode during that time. You had major worldwide revolutions going on. French Revolution, the 1700s, right? French. Then 1802, you had a lot of revolution, Russian Revolution and stuff was going on. A lot of stuff was happening in Central America, South America, etc. Then also you had a major explosion in spiritual, breakaway spiritual orders and spiritual disciplines, trying to break away from the contemporary dogmatic Christian phenomena. But anyway, so if you follow, or if you get into the whole metaphysical movement and study that stuff, you can trace a lot of those leaders back to theosophy, that it really opened them up to the metaphysical teachings and the mysteries and Kemet and number and science and astronomy, esoteric astronomy, all that kind of thing. So, Mary Etta Baker, Christian Science, Science of Mind, all that stuff came out of a lot of those who were studying or had been introduced to those original ideas and concepts back during that time.
What's
But
your name again?
who? You talking about Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical movement, Theosophy. Blavatsky. Helena, what was her name? Helena Blavatsky. But she, there's a book about her coming to light or something. There's an autobiography about her. And then of course, she did Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, which are two classic pieces on esoteric material. And not only just because of what it says, because of the references they give Because she was in clairvoyant communication and was supposed to be dealing with where you go into trance state and start writing. She would go into trances and supposed to have been into a communication with certain higher masters that would transmit this knowledge to her. Now, some people say that some of that stuff is connected with people going to their own higher states of consciousness and contacting those things in their own unconscious mind and bringing it out through your conscious mind and writing that stuff out. So however you want to look at it, it ends up with the same result. Okay? Okay, let me give you all this stuff here, too. All I can do is give you an introduction to the basic ideas and introduce you to the material, and if you so move, of course, then you can follow up on it. And further on down the line, we'll get into some more other in-depth aspects of it. So we'd be here all year trying to go through this. Okay, so going back to numerology, astrological symbols, and graphics. Remember we're talking about how the full circle or the circle represents superconscious, straight line represents conscious, and semicircle represents unconscious, or physical, mental and spiritual, or body, soul, and spirit. So it talks about how each of the numbers are related. Some of you may not have this material. You got this?
Sacred science and numbers.
This one right here. Okay, so go to 5. So 5 is the number of man. Fallen man, the horizontal line is upheld by the soul. Soul representing the semicircle, and the straight lines represents the physical. This number denotes change and versatility. It is a testing number, generally a symbol of imperfection and incompletion. Here is man reaching out through his 5 senses for experience. In the scriptures, it most often pertains to the senses or to the planes of manifestation. So it gives you a lot of little keys here. I keep reiterating or saying this over and over again. You have to sit down and meditate on this stuff if you're really going to understand what they're talking about, because so much is said here. You just read it, you'll miss a lot of it. Yeah, you read it, but did you really understand and internalize what they were talking about? So it says 5 is the number of man. First of all, and as we go through the other schools and we go over the same thing, you'll see certain common ideas that keep coming up, and then they also give you other information. Number one thing, 5 is the symbol of the 5-pointed star. It's a symbol of consciousness because it's the 2 arms and 2 legs and then the head. So the head now represents thinking, or the mind, which differentiates humans from the animal kingdom. So then 5 is the number of man, because of man is a star in terms of the symbolism and significance of the head. But it's fallen man because it just deals with the intellect. And the intellect is the consciousness that experiences the physical plane through the senses. So then fallen man, when they say fallen man, they say, well, he fell. Where did he fall from? Where did man fall from? Or when they talk about men, they're talking about humanity. From the higher, from the spiritual. So remember we talked about this 5 is taking us from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. Remember we went, in one sense, how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how this was, basically 4 represents the physical plane, or matter. It represents the cross. And the cross is that which humanity is crucified on the cross, or the spirit is crucified on the cross, which represents that the physical plane has imprisoned the spirit voluntarily went into the physical so that it could be resurrected as consciousness. Because originally it was only potential. But it's only through gaining experience, and through experience you gain knowledge, you begin to know. And it's through that knowing that then one recognizes the true nature of life. That's why we say it's so important to reflect on what you do. Do you reflect on your day? Do you reflect on what you're doing? Are you just flying through life doing stuff, but really never reflect on the meaning of what you're doing? Where is this taking me? Why am I doing these things? Most people are just flying through life, experiencing, really existing, as opposed to experiencing. Because you experience something by understanding or reflecting on it while you're doing it. Are you aware of the significance of what you're going through right now? Are you? Are you aware of it relative to where you've been and where you can go? So that's like past, present, and future, but it's all here at the same time. Now, are we aware of this? Are we conscious of this? Again, the whole point was to evolve your consciousness to where you are aware of the wholeness while you were each moment in time. So as you're doing everything that you're doing, are you doing it relative to the greater whole? Or are you just reacting and whatever? I mean, these are questions I'm raising for you to think about. Because the ultimate goal is for us to become cosmically conscious. That means that every act that we do is in reference to the cosmic order of things. The goal, the ultimate goal is to spiritualize matter, is to spiritualize the physical plane. We're in a process now of spiritualizing matter. When we say spiritualize, it means you bring forth the more positive, creative, life-producing values are reflected in life as opposed to the divisive, separative, destructive qualities. So as you make your choices, as you decide what you're going to do, what is it relative to? So when we say, so that goes back to the fall of man, because humanity came from spirit, or the divine, or life, or pure light. All those things are synonymous, pure energy, because light and energy is the source of all things, and within it there is laws, which is intelligence that governs that. You really need to look at that. If you don't, look at those nature programs they have on, how animals adopt characteristics of other animals or body shapes and colors. And well, how do they do that? How does their genetic structure communicate and alter itself to match another animal that might be poisonous to the predator so it can take on those characteristics so it can preserve itself? How does it know that the other entity is poisonous to its predator? How does it know that? So what it says is that all the universe is full of intelligence. And so life is trying to constantly preserve itself. So there's an interconnectivity between life. So that means there's a unified field that connects all of nature together. It's not just separate entities over there by themselves. It's all connected. But the point I'm saying is intelligence in life. Life itself has intelligence. Fall, and I don't want to go too far because we can talk all night, but so 5 is the number of man or humanity. Fallen man, the horizontal line, is upheld by the soul or the divine principle. So it's giving you insight. It says the soul is a divine principle in you. This number denotes change and versatility. So then, man or humanity is constantly having to deal with change and developing the capacity for versatility. It is a testing number, generally a symbol of imperfection and incompletion. Well, if we look at 5 is in the midpoint between 1 and 9. So it's not complete yet because 10 is a completion of a cycle. 5 is at the midpoint, so it's not complete yet. So that means that it's just at the 5 level, just at the level of the mind, we're not complete. So just because you can think doesn't make you complete yet. It also talks about 5 as a testing number, which means that humanity is constantly being tested. Here is man reaching out through his five senses for experience. So basically what the senses are mechanism for you to experience life. Start to experience it as opposed to just to exist. Because you can get more meaning now. You know, if you don't reflect on what you're getting, you just existing. Then it says, in the scriptures, it most often pertains to the senses or to the five planes of manifestation. So many times they'll talk about five, these different numbers in the scripture, where it also will let you know what they're really talking about. Right. 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 And basically it's talking about how one uses his five senses. Do you use them for the lower or the higher? And using the story, we'll talk about the transition from when a person was identified in one name, because a lot of times when they move to another level of consciousness, their name changes. And using the name change, they will add certain letters to their old name that changes the vibration of their name, which takes it to another level, or another level of energy, another octave.
How would you
like Saul to Paul.
That's what I was thinking of.
Right.
Exactly. How would you equate the S and that being the
Well, you have to know what the numerical value of S and numerical value of P, but not just the English. You have to go back to the Hebrew, because P is really Phi, which equals light. So now he has incorporated light, and light represents knowledge and spirit. So now his name is now driven from light as opposed to the S. I have to go back and see what the S represents. But also the role that he played in terms of what, like if he was a tax collector or all that is really symbolical of the characteristics and not the specific person who is collecting taxes. But if you really want to get into that, 2 books. Key book is this one, Sacred Sciences of Numbers. And since you raised that question, I was reviewing that today, and it talked about that. Where is it? Because it actually goes through that, talking about Paul's name. Where is it? Let's see. Oh, it talked about the parable of the loaves too in here, and the 5s. Well, since you brought it up, we can deal with it. Let's see here. Parable of the 10 virgins. Talked about the change of his name. Let's see. Trying to find the exact quote. Dick, creation. Well, let's read a couple pages. It says 5 stands for the Christ, or the Spirit, resurrected from the tomb of matter. Now 4 represents the tomb of matter, the physical plane. So 5 represents the Christ, but Christ is not this white man. It represents the Spirit resurrected from matter, because Jesus became Christed, or the Christ, when he transcended the physical and started to operate from the spiritual. So it's the terminology that can also go back to Haru. I think when we dealt with the issue of one of our sessions, we dealt with when we were dealing with light, and how Christos, the anointed one, the ancient words really go back, and the key or core word is light. And Osiris, Asar, Haru, Krishna, all those names can be broken back down in ancient terminology to light, which is spirit. 4 is the cross upon which one is crucified. Only as the lower nature is subjugated or crucified does the ego begin to rise toward freedom through a recognition of its innate divinity. So only as the lower nature is subjugated or crucified. So crucifixion is a synonym for subjugation, because then the lower nature dies, to the higher. So that means you gain control, you master it. And so so again, it's symbolism for each individual having to die to the physical to be reborn in the spiritual. It talks about states of consciousness.
So basically that's what the
Right, but it's also representing the 4 cardinal points, because it has the head of the man, it has the wings of the eagle, it has the claws of the lion, and the body of a bull. What's that? That's the 4 cardinal points, which represent the tetragrammaton, the 4 directions, the 4 energy, the Yad-He, Vad-He, the fire, earth, and water. So in accordance with these facts, that the esoteric numerology of early Christians held 5 to signify the sacred wounds upon the body of Christ Jesus, these being 5 in number. Related to this fact is the sorrow of the Via Dolorosa, since this is so difficult and beset with so many temptations, which was the path of misery. I think that was when he had to carry the cross from the city up to when they set up and crucified him. That walk was, representing that misery. But that really represents how each of us have to carry our cross upon which we're going to be crucified, which is all the, because you're born with it. You have to carry that. And the thing is, you have to then subjugate your lower nature so you can master it, so that you can be resurrected or reborn.
On that pathway, the number of stations
Was 14 stations?
14.
It was 14 stations, right, which really represents double times 7. The 7 chakras, or the 7 levels of consciousness, double in their masculine and their feminine, which creates a whole. Once you start understanding these numbers and how they relate to certain key components, when you see these things in all these scriptures and stories, you can see what metaphysically they're really talking about. Because it ain't but one story. And that spirit coming into matter, manifesting the physical organism to recognize its potential and to fulfill its potential. That's what life is all about. From the noon to Ptah, to Atum, to the enters, to the heroes, to man. Is to manifest your highest divine capacities and potentiality. That's what it's all about. You can throw away every book and everything if you understand that basic fact. That's it. That's what they all talk about. So you can spend years, learning all the language and all the stories and all that, and all these different systems, and when you look at it, it's like, it's all talking about the same thing. All of them, the same thing.
That makes it much more simple.
It's simple. It's really simple. Yeah. But then, if we make it too simple, then people can't pay all this money, buy all these books, all this paraphernalia, we got jobs, got an industry, all that. So people would be, people fighting each other, killing each other over words, which is it's talking about the same thing. But yet they're killing because you wrong and I'm right. You chosen, we not chosen. Like how is, they thinking God got a why, I chose you, I didn't chose you. I mean, literally, if you just think how people interpret things, that's how they're relating to it. But because they're just existing and not experiencing, because they're not really reflecting on what they're doing, they just accepting this stuff and ain't really thinking about what the logic of what they really follow, and will run off and destroy all kind of people and all kind of stuff behind an illusion. But anyway, I was trying to find, it says, the life and works of the Apostle Paul are indicative of the powers of 5, says Paul. It doeth not yet appear what we shall be. It said, it doeth not yet appear what we shall be. This is some of the, so-called words of Paul. But what is it talking about? It doeth not yet appear what we shall be. Right. Because people are still focusing on the external. They can't see who they really are. They say you have to deny the world to gain it. What are they talking about? They're saying you have to turn your back on the physical to gain control of it. Or to gain, what controls the physical is the spiritual. Everything physical comes from something or is guided by something invisible. it's not that it's not real, you just can't see it with the five senses, but it's there. But if everybody's only focusing on those things that can be seen with the five senses, they miss what is really real. So if your mind is still focused there, you do not see yet what is to be. It says these words are particularly applicable to five, the true symbol of which is the pentagram, the five-pointed star. Five has been called the dual number because it represents the two natures, the higher and the lower, which contend for supremacy in the life of man. 2 and a 3. 2 is the dichotomy, right? The tension, the divisive nature, and 3 represents what? But what's the key words? It's important for you to get those key words. It's relationship, but it's understanding. Because understanding can only be a function of 3, because it deals with reconciliation of the two opposites. You need a third factor to reconcile opposition. Opposition cannot be reconciled without a third factor. Of what? In one sense, yeah, it's the outcome. You know, it's the interaction of the two produces another entity, which creates a 3, and the third factor represents the summation of the two. You know, male and female get together, and so it creates relationship. On 4. Right. So really the third factor is really the relationship between the two. The 4 is the product of the relationship. So if a man and a woman are in tension, then the tension is reconciled based upon a third factor. You know, or do they hate each other, they love each other, are they in business together, whatever that third factor is, creates a relationship. Then the relationship then creates the interaction that produces something, which is the 4th factor, which then brings it in a certain level of manifestation, or makes it tangible. We're going to talk about the artist. You know, you have, like I'm a sculptor, I'm an artist, I have some wood, but that doesn't create anything. I have to create a relationship, which is the inspiration. What do I see I want to do with the wood? That still doesn't produce the artwork, because then I have to then follow or implement the relationship, which then makes a 4th factor, which would be the sculptured piece. So then the 5th factor is, when I reflect on the sculptured piece, what's the meaning of it? 5. Now the mind comes in. Now what does it mean? What's the significance of this thing? That's a 5th factor. 6 is, do I like it or don't like it? So it says, and I'll finish up with this, and then we'll go on to the other part. It says, so 5 is a combination of 3 and 2. 2 is the dichotomy. 3 is the reconciliation and relationship. It's also the, 2 and 3. So it's male and female too. But it talks about the higher and lower nature. 2 would be the lower nature, 3 would be the higher nature in this sense. The victory of the higher or spiritual nature over the lower is beautifully illustrated in the life of Paul. The change resulted in the adoption of another name, Saul, which became Paul. The former name represented in his case the lower man. In his awakened spiritual state, he could no longer endure the vibratory impact of the name Saul. The letter P or Phi, P-H-E in Hebrew, is symbolical of light and is represented pictorially by a star. In the struggle between the two conflicting natures, the person coming under 5 must contend with a nervous, restless energy. His environment undergoes constant change. Go back to the thing we talked about. 5 represented change and versatility. You have to be able to adapt to the change you're confronted with, because if your mind starts to reflect on life, you start to learn. You have to adapt. You have to change. You just can't stay the same. If you become stagnant, you die. So it means you have to be open to change, which means your mind must become versatile. That's what's happening now in society. Society is trying to maintain stagnant or static conditioning of what was. And you can't do that. But that's what they're trying to do. Go back to what was and how things used to be, as opposed to looking at how changes are coming and adapt to the change. They're trying to stagnate, and so it's not going to happen. So it says, Life being his supreme teacher, he is brought into touch with many places, personalities, and problems, each and all of which yield their quota of experience and supply an abundance of material out of which to extract the qualities that make for wisdom, character, and the growth of the soul. This is the life of the various players in Scripture actually is talking about the life of each of us. It's not something outside of us. They're just talking about parables about what we have to go through to become spiritually conscious. And this is the key. This is the whole thing right here. It says, life being his supreme teacher, or life being our supreme teacher, we are brought into touch with many places, personalities, and problems, each and all of which yield their quota of experience and supply an abundance of material out of which we extract the qualities that make for wisdom, character, and the growth of our souls. This is what life is really all about. So everything that we're encountering, all the change we're going through, is really trying to bring us material that we can develop wisdom, character, and the growth of our soul. If we see it like that. Most of us, again, don't even see it like that. Anyway, I'll finish up. It says, since 5 is half of 10, the cycle of unity, 10 being the cycle of unity, it's not surprising to find the 5 person a wide traveler. But his wanderings, or his or her wanderings, are not aimless. They contribute to the enrichment of the spirit and the strength of will and purpose necessary to meet successfully the trying situation, which invariably meet the pilgrim on the path of 5. Then it talks about the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. It talks about the 7 days of creation, and the 5th day goes into Joshua in terms of the old. See, in the Bible, you have the Old Testament and the New Testament. And so you have different players in the Old Testament who have their equivalents in the New Testament. The whole issue of the Joshua was supposed to bring about the sun and the moon remaining still. And so the people really think that physically he made the sun